Well, I waited today to see if I could pick up the press conference of Nigel Farage, and I don't think I could. It was supposed to be an opportunity for him to put allegations to rest. Instead, it's become a performance of counter accusation. If it took place, it offered no real clarity, no remorse, no certainty, no sense that he understands the seriousness of what's been alleged. What we saw was a politician so convinced of his own persecution that those who claim to have been hurt by him become the problem rather than the reality of their hurt. Let's be absolutely clear about what is alleged. More than 20 former pupils and teachers from Dulwich College have come forward. Their accounts span Jewish students who say they were mocked with references to gas chambers, children of Asian heritage who report being called racial slurs and bullied for their ethnicity, and younger black pupils who say Farage singled them out with scorn and dehumanising gestures. These are not flippant remarks remembered dimly, these are vivid recollections of intimate humiliation. Survivors of the Holocaust have now written to the leader of Reform UK asking him to confront his past honestly and to apologise. And in the face of that, Farage insists nothing he said was ever malicious. It was just macho schoolboy banter, a phrase that's become his shield. Yet the power dynamic of a 17-year-old targeting a 9-year-old is impossible to pass off as mutual jollity. When a child points at a younger black boy and says, "That is the way to Africa," this is not witty mischief, it is racial domination, it is the imposition of hierarchy and fear, and for the child on the receiving end, the memory doesn't soften with time. As one former pupil put it, victims remember, trauma is sticky. It adheres long after the abuser has moved on. Farage's defence rests on a claim of context. The 1970s and 80s were different times. They were indeed. The BBC itself showed blackface. Sitcoms used slurs, mocked minorities, passed them off as entertainment. Therefore, the argument runs, who is the BBC to judge him now? That line of thinking might be clever political theatre, but it offers no moral anchor. The BBC's past misjudgments do not cleanse Farage, and they don't cleanse his judgments. The existence of racism in popular culture never diminished its harmfulness. It simply meant more people got hurt more often and with social permission. To use that era as cover is not a defence. It's an indictment of how much bigotry thrived without challenge. The press conference was striking for what Farage did not do. He didn't accept responsibility. He didn't recognise the pain of others that others recalled. He didn't express regret that anyone who was wounded by his actions. Instead, he raised his fist to the culture war sky and demanded that the BBC apologise to him. He turned a moment of accountability into a lecture on his own victimhood. It was political narcissism in its purest form. At least, that's what I assume was his press conference. The Reform deputy leader, Richard Tice, has been even more dismissive, branding the testimony's made-up twaddle. In doing so, he accuses Holocaust survivors, a BAFTA-winning director, bankers, engineers, teachers, classmates, with no political ties, of participating in a coordinated political fabrication. One has to ask, what does that say about the instincts of a party that claims to stand for ordinary people? When ordinary people speak out, they're sneered at as liars. This controversy has not happened in a vacuum. It coincides with Farage's aggressive rhetoric about immigration. He claims cities like Glasgow are now suffering cultural smashing because 1/3 of the children don't speak English as a first language. The Prime Minister has rightly condemned this as toxic. Farage is not simply analysing demographic change, he's stoking resentment and signalling that British identity belongs to some and not to others. When set beside the testimonies from Dulwich College, his political message becomes a continuation of the same story. It always comes back to who belongs and who doesn't. Now, his own councillor is under investigation for racist posts attacking British Muslims and British-born black professionals. Farage affects surprise, but once again the pattern is too obvious to ignore. When one normalises prejudice at the top, one finds it flourishing below. In my experience in schools, if you see bullying in the playground, it's almost certainly in the staff room. There's a reason why this matters beyond character. Farage wants to be Prime Minister. He seeks the highest office in the land. And with that ambition comes a responsibility to demonstrate integrity. That requires honesty about one's faults, especially those rooted in discrimination. Voters can forgive most things, but they cannot forgive dishonesty about the harm done to others. Are the allegations politically timed? Well, probably. But timing doesn't dissolve the truth. An abuser does not get a statute of limitations on the pain they cause. The real question is simple. Did he say these things that are described? If not, then he should state clearly that these detailed testimonies are false and defamatory. If he did, then he should apologise without qualification, not if offence was taken, not it was the culture back then, a straightforward apology, a straightforward acknowledgement that what he said was racist, that it inflicted real injury, and that he regrets it and wouldn't do it again. Until he can give that answer, until he can say that he wouldn't tolerate it in others, the public is entitled to doubt his suitability to lead. Britain deserves political figures who can confront the past with candour, not those who blame the BBC for asking uncomfortable questions, not those who hide behind the permissive prejudices of a bygone age, and certainly not those who treat victims as obstacles to their own advancement. Nigel Farage has built his career on character, the rebel, the straight talker, the man who says the things others are afraid to say. But now he's being asked to speak truth about himself, to show courage, not in attacking others, but in acknowledging the darker chapters of their own story. This is the test of leadership. So far, he is failing it. And what happens next will say much about the kind of country we intend to be. Do we believe in accountability? Do we value the voice of those who were vulnerable? Will we listen to the survivors of history rather than the pundits of the moment? These questions reach far beyond Nigel Farage. They cut to the moral centre of our politics. We often pretend that the past is past. In moments like this, we discover it's not. It walks beside us in the people we become, and the measure of a leader is whether he's prepared to face the person he once was.